The Falkland Islands are 350 miles from the southern tip of Argentina. They're an 18-hour flight from the UK, either via Ascension Island or Punta Arenas in Chile. Stanley, the capital, lies at latitude 51 degrees south. For comparison, London lies at 51 degrees north. The climate of the Falklands is similar to that of the UK, but it is slightly cooler and windier. Giant petrels are very large birds. They're a metre in length and have a 2-metre wingspan. They love to feed near sewage pipes in Stanley Harbour, which may account for the local name of stinkers. Although the Falkland Islands consist mainly of the two large islands, East and West Falkland, there are over 700 smaller islands surrounding them. Many are excellent for wildlife. A cruise ship may land up to 300 passengers, each paying a £10 landing fee. This is sufficient incentive to maintain or improve wildlife habitats and is much more lucrative than sheep farming. Access to the smaller islands is by a 9-seater plane. The pilot decides on his landing site at the last minute in response to wind speed and direction. It's not unusual to land in the middle of a heather moorland or on a beach. A trip to an outer island may involve many landings as people are picked up and dropped off. There are 4 species of geese on the islands. They're very abundant and perhaps the most common birds. They'll probably be the first birds that any visitors will see. There can be a major problem when a light aircraft is trying to land. One farmer told me that he believes they're such a pest that he shoots thousands each year and feeds them to his pigs to provide bacon for the cruise ship passengers. Of the 300 plant species in the Falklands, there are as many introduced plants as native species. The seeds of many aliens were introduced along with European grass seed, which farmers used to improve their pastures. European gorse was introduced as a windbreak and for cattle fencing, but is now spreading out of control around the settlements. Magellanic penguins make their nesting burrows under the gorse. Here their young are safe from predators. Sheep sorrel and Yorkshire fog are 2 of the British plants now widespread over the islands. Kelp geese, as the name implies, feed on seaweed above the low tide level. Sometimes they graze on the greens around freshwater ponds. When feeding on the shore, they appear to need to drink copious amounts of fresh water. Many species of birds are found along the coast, including 2 different oyster catchers. The blackish oyster catcher mainly feeds on rocky shores, whereas the Magellanic, the one with white under the rump, can mainly be found feeding in creeks and sandy bays. Both species have very loud, powerful calls. The male's courtship behaviour involves tail fanned out erect and a series of loud whistles, with his head held low to the ground. The blackish oyster catcher breeds later than the Magellanic. It's not unusual for only 1 large egg to be incubated, but there are often 2. The meadowlark is the most colourful of the Falkland birds. It is locally called the robin. The tussock bird is a common and widespread species on those islands where mice, cats, rats and foxes have not been introduced. It favours areas where tussock grass adjoins a boulder beach. The birds are very tame and quite inquisitive. Sometimes they will perch on a person's head. In the past, most of the natural tussock grass areas were destroyed by overgrazing and burning. Conservation-minded farmers replanted much of what exists today. A mature tussock plant may be 3 meters high and substitutes for the absence of trees. It provides some shelter from the wind for nesting and foraging birds, and even the large striated caracara nests in this habitat. You have to take care when walking through this dense jungle, or you may stand on a sleeping elephant seal weighing a couple of tons. There are no native tree species, but Monterey cypress and cordyline or New Zealand cabbage palm have been introduced around the settlements as windbreaks. Hebe elliptica is the only large native shrub. It can grow to 3 meters, but is only found in areas with no grazing, such as on the sea cliffs. A plant of tussock grass was found which was 300 years old. The old dead stems decay very slowly and form a boggy peaty soil where Magellanic snipe feed. The striated caracara breeds on only a few uninhabited islands in the Falklands. There is also a tiny breeding population in Tierra del Fuego. Because the birds have been persecuted so much over the past century, they now have a conservation status of near threatened and are one of the rarest birds of prey in the world. Locally, the bird is known as Johnny Rook, and it will come and investigate you, hopping up to within 2 meters. If you put down binoculars, camera or spectacles, it will steal them and use them to adorn its nest. It feeds on young penguins or seabirds, eggs, carrion, and basically anything edible. Its nest is often built close to seabird colonies and often on the tussock grass. If you accidentally walk up to a nest, you may regret it when you are vigorously attacked by several adults defending the young. This is probably a 3rd-year immature bird. It looks strong and powerful and in excellent condition. Full adult plumage is acquired only in the 5th year. The adult birds are more streaked with white. This adult is probably old enough to be starting to lose condition. There are around 7,000 southern sea lions. The males have an enormous head and neck with a mane of guard hairs, and in size they dwarf the females. The young are born in December. The water fox became extinct on the islands in 1876, and now there are no native terrestrial mammals. Patagonian grey foxes were introduced onto several smaller islands in 1930 as part of a fur farming project and still survive on 4 islands. Guanaco were also introduced to one island. This thriving colony has destroyed much of the tussock grass and has caused extensive land erosion. Rats, mice, cats, dogs, rabbits and hares have also been introduced, and each causes their own environmental problems. The Falkland skua, which is a subspecies of the Antarctic skua, also nests close to seabird colonies. It is a large, powerful bird with a 5-foot wingspan. It will allow you to approach and walk past safely, but as soon as you turn your back, you'll be attacked. The bald patch on your head is a favourite target. The birds will steal food from other seabirds. They will kill young penguins and steal eggs. Tussock grass is a natural vegetation type near the shores, but inland the predominant vegetation is oceanic heathland, consisting of dwarf shrubs, white grass and cushion plants. The dominant plant in drier areas is Empetrum rubrum, locally called diddle-dee. The berries make some very nice jam if you have the patience to collect them. They are also a good food source for many birds, including geese. The kelp goose makes a nest very close to the shore and produces feather down to line it with. The female is a very attentive parent and keeps an eye on the young at all times while they are feeding on what appears to be Ulva lactuca or sea lettuce. If there is any apparent threat, the whole family will take to the sea. The white male usually watches over them from a distance. Cobb's wren is a very rare endemic species. It is extinct on many islands due to predation by rats and mice. It feeds among the boulders along the beach and nests in a hole in the base of a tussock grass. Carcass Island is one of its strongholds. There are some good examples of flowering plants on the mountain cliffs inland where the sheep seldom graze. However, red-backed hawks may also be found nesting in these areas. If you stray anywhere near a nest, the birds become very vocal and will attack you by swooping steeply and rapidly. They fly out of the sun and you can't see them coming. All in all, a pretty scary experience. The east coast of Carcass Island is steep and rocky with many cliffs. There are enormous beds of kelp and other seaweeds just offshore. The seaweed in this area represents a huge resource which could be harvested to produce alginates, but at what cost to the wildlife? Falkland's lavender grows near the shore on both rocky and sandy coasts. It is a member of the aster family and not a true lavender. King cormorants are found along the cliffs. From here they can launch themselves into flight quite easily. This breeding colony numbers at least 1,000 birds. The birds require a source of fresh water close by so that they can gather mud to construct and repair their nest mounds. One of the things that you never forget about a visit to the Falklands is the stench which comes from a penguin or cormorant colony. Acrid and pungent combined with rancid fishmeal fertilizer is a good description. The smell becomes so etched in one's memory that you can even smell penguin colonies shown on TV. Snowy sheathbills are non-breeding birds from Antarctica. They spend the summer scavenging around seabird colonies and will even feed on seal feces. Black-crowned night herons are very handsome birds. They are common and often seen hunting along beaches and in rock pools. Sometimes they hunt from rafts of floating kelp just off the shore. Their usual nest site is on clumps of vegetation on cliffs, but now they have also started to nest in introduced Monterey cypress around the settlements. There are 5 species of penguin which breed in the Falklands. Another 5 species have been recorded as vagrants. For every human inhabitant there are 450 penguins. In the past, the whalers destroyed many of the penguin colonies. 8 penguins produced 1 gallon of oil when they were rendered down, and some set pots for boiling penguins can still be found. Magellanic penguins are hole nesters, with breeding colonies often extending all the way around some of the islands. Their distribution is dependent on the availability of a suitable substrate in which to make their burrows. The population of some islands may be 10,000 or more, but no accurate survey has ever been successfully carried out. Magellanic penguins have hardly any buoyancy and float with just their heads above the water. Studies have shown that at times they dive to depths of 300 feet or more. They feed on anchovies and small squid. The average distance for a fishing trip is 44 miles. There are some beautiful sandy beaches, always with some wildlife activity close at hand, be it penguins to-ing and fro-ing or the ever-watchful Carcass making an inspection. Elephant Beach on Pebble Island is 4 miles long, and at low tide it makes a perfect landing strip for light aircraft. Kelp gulls are similar to the European lesser black-backed gull. Their numbers increased with the increase in sheep farming. They mainly feed on sheep carcasses or anything else they can scavenge. Nesting colonies may consist of up to several hundred pairs. Around the Pebble Island settlement there are many Falklands flightless steamer ducks. They are one of 2 endemic bird species, the other being Cobb's wren. The term steamer duck refers to their behaviour during territorial disputes when they steam across the sea throwing up vast plumes of spray by the combined action of rapid wing beats and furious paddling. Their strong beaks allow them to deal with mussels and other shellfish. Pebble Island is 19 miles long by around 3 miles wide. There's only one farm here, with only one farmer somehow managing 10,000 sheep, single-handed. There's also a tourist lodge that can accommodate up to 11 people. The settlement is now a bit of a ghost town with many empty sheds and houses, and similar to some of the Scottish islands, it's like a living museum displaying every piece of agricultural machinery that has ever been used here in the past. Peregrines may be seen around the coasts. They are not uncommon, and there are estimated to be almost 1,000 pairs breeding. In the autumn they have been reported killing prions and storm petrels 35 miles offshore by using ships or lighthouses as feeding stations. Gentoo penguins are very numerous. In the year 2000 there were an estimated 100,000 breeding pairs. However, their conservation status is still classified as near threatened because of a 40% decline in their numbers over the past 20 years. Their decline is thought to be due to interactions with commercial trawl fisheries and also poor breeding success in the rookeries. The penguin rookeries kill the vegetation, and so each year the Gentoo move to another site within the same general area. Traditional and often quite circuitous routes exist to the breeding colonies. However, this year on Pebble Island the breeding colony used a site an incredible 3 miles from the coast, 2 miles away from last year's colony. The use of inland sites has probably evolved to avoid predation by sea lions. They are very photogenic birds. Unlike some others. The damp cool westerly wind is persistent and averages 15 miles per hour. Seabird activity seems to increase under gale conditions, with thousands of albatross and other birds feeding just offshore. Inland, the tussock grass provides the only shelter from the wind, and because of this almost 70% of the bird species use this habitat for feeding, breeding or both. The wind-swept sand blowing along the beaches is particularly annoying, and some of the small shorebirds use whatever shelter they can find. The rockhopper penguins at one of the colonies on Pebble Island have a comparatively easy route down to the sea. This is far from the norm. A couple of birds initiate a movement and try to gather a group before journeying out into the predator-filled waters just off the shore. They will be hoping that one of the others in the group will be eaten instead of themselves. If you sit down quietly at the edge of the colony, the birds will visit you and peer inquisitively at such a strange and unusual sight. On Sea Lion Island, the HMS Sheffield Memorial has been placed in the middle of a more typical rockhopper nesting colony. The birds nest on the rocks above some steep cliffs and ferocious seas. Again, probably a defence against sea lion predation. The birds are classified as vulnerable, even though there are 300,000 breeding pairs on the islands. Some of the breeding colonies number thousands of pairs, and the Falklands is the most important breeding site for this species in the world. The problem is that rockhopper numbers are decreasing rapidly. In 1910, on Kidney Island near Stanley, 25,000 rockhopper eggs were collected. In 1953, there were only 1,000 eggs, and now there are hardly any birds here at all. It would appear that egg collection has caused a decline, but this is only partly true, because the birds lay a second clutch, allowing successful breeding. It's almost unbelievable that the birds can travel up and down these vertical cliffs as they move between the colony and the sea. Even extremely high breaking waves don't appear to pose any real problems to them. Rockhoppers often breed on sites alongside king cormorants, and in some cases black-browed albatross as well. For such a globally rare species, the Falkland flightless steamer duck can be locally abundant. There are 20 individuals in this photo. If you also look carefully at the sky behind, you will gain an impression of the vast numbers of seabirds found in the area. This is a king penguin on Sea Lion Island, even though there is not a breeding colony there. Basically, any type of Antarctic penguin can turn up anywhere in the Falklands at any time. On one occasion, an Adelie penguin, a quite rare vagrant, was seen strolling down the main street in Stanley. It walked into the offices of the local newspaper, which ironically is called the Penguin News. Maybe he wanted his story published. Sea Lion Island is only 4 miles long by 1 mile wide, and yet each October 560 female elephant seals come ashore to give birth onto a beach only half a mile long. Indeed, at the height of the breeding season there may be a peak of 2,000 individuals. The elephant seals in turn attract killer whales just off the shore, and in 2001 a juvenile killer whale became stranded on one of the beaches. A small group of people eventually freed it after several hours. When molting, the elephant seals divert the blood flow from deep within their bodies to the outer skin layer. This allows a new fur to grow quickly during the molt. But if the animals enter the cold seawater while in this condition, they will quickly lose their body heat and die. King penguins are much bigger than the gentoo. They are both taller and much more bulkier. The king penguin colony at Volunteer Point is accessed by an off-road journey of several hours from Stanley. It's a fantastic place to visit, with around 500 pairs of breeding king penguins successfully rearing around 250 young each year. This colony consists of almost the total Falklands population. They are magnificent birds and are the largest penguin in the Falklands with a height of 1 metre. Eggs are laid between November and February, and the full breeding cycle takes 13 months, which means that they can only raise 2 young every 3 years. There are a lot of behavioural interactions to be seen within the colony.